Hi guys, MrRoflWaffles here. I'm today doing something a little different. It's not something I've ever actually done before, and I think you guys are really going to like it. I'm joined today by the one and the only Kevin Sherwood. Say hi, Kevin.
How's it going?
Kevin is a very much OG member of the Zombies team and the Treyarch team, I guess. He's worked on all of the content, basically, that we know from the very beginnings of things back when Zombies was just getting started all the way to now. And I'm just really happy to be able to have the opportunity to talk to you a little bit. I'll start things off just by saying, could you give us a little rundown of your last, because you've been at Treyarch, I believe, for about, 10 years or so?
Yeah, it's been, I think it was 10 years and a couple months ago, something like that. Yeah.
Awesome. So if I could get like a little rundown of your time over those 10 years, that would be really interesting to hear.
Sure. How in detail do you want to hear how I got there in the first place?
Let's definitely cover that as detailed as you feel inclined. I've got time.
Sure. I'll try to give the too long didn't read version, but
okay, cool.
Basically, I went to Berklee College of Music and was planning on going into guitar performance, which is a terrible idea. Mm-hmm. And I had a guitar teacher actually tell me that, you can practice whenever you want, so why don't you take something that's worthwhile? So, and it was a performance teacher, who said that to me. So I'm like, it's a good point. So I went into production and engineering. And I had a buddy, he's the guy I have in my videos who plays piano a lot, Corey Redgrift. He's done some of the demonstrations on my YouTube channel. He was really into game music, and it kind of gave me the idea that, maybe that's something that I could go into, after graduation. But when I got out of college, I ended up doing the same thing, which is the fear of going anywhere, and went back in my mom's basement basically and played Warcraft 3 every day. And
not a bad pastime.
Yeah, I definitely did it a lot. And I just kind of got stuck there for a little while, knowing I had to go to California at some point. And then I had a buddy of mine who used to play drums in a band I had called Cube, which is back in college as well.
Right.
And he got a tester job at Activision, and he called to tell me about it. And I didn't believe him. I'm like, what do you mean tester job? I didn't think those things were real. And he's like, yeah, I play video games all day and they pay you. So
it's like, hell yeah.
I broke up with my girlfriend that night and packed my car and drove from Michigan to California.
Wow.
Yeah, the $1,000 in my pocket and no real prospects. Yeah,
that's a lot more epic than I was. I thought it was going to be like, oh yeah, saw an ad in the paper and thought, why not? I'll give it a go. Or no, damn, wow.
No, so him and his wife were kind enough to let me sleep on their floor until I found a job.
Okay.
And you can sign up for QA positions at Activision on their website. So that's what I did. And he got called back, and someone else I knew got called back, but I never got the call. And, I was running out of money. So I'm like, his wife was getting a little annoyed that I was on their floor, which I would be too. You don't want to have that, the guy on the couch from like half.
Yep, absolutely.
So I knew I had to, do something. So I found out the lady's name who hired people there, and I went through the voicemail, and he kept hitting pound until I found her name, and I said, hey, I got your call, but it cut out before you gave me the address.
Oh.
So I played my hand, and then they called me back. Sorry, come in tomorrow and we'll do the interview. I'm like, okay, all right.
Awesome.
So yeah, I went out there, took the wrong turn, and was 30 minutes late my first day, and got into the tester job from there, and that was 10 years ago exactly.
Damn.
And yeah, and so I was testing Quake 4 on the PC. It was I think it was just released at that point, and the 360 wasn't yet out. And there was a guy across the hall who needed people for a specific team to work on X-Men Legends 2 multiplayer, because the online version was in danger of not shipping. And so they needed a crack team, like right at the end, to just do nothing but test that all day long. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to try Quake on the 360 because no one had ever seen 360 before. And so that's what I told them. I'm like, when they come to pick, I told this guy, I'm like, tell them I want to be on the 360. And I came back up, and I was on X-Men Legends 2. I found out that guy lied and told him I wanted to be on Legends 2 so that he could have my spot in the 360.
Oh, no. And forevermore, you hated his very being.
For right then I did, because when I went in the room the first day on that team, the guy who was going to lead us came in and said, "Hey, I'm David Vonderhaar, and I'm the senior, or the online manager for Central Tech, and what do you want to do with your career?" And like right when he said that, I'm like, I never forgot that dude lied, but it probably got me where I am today. So yeah, I just told him, I want to be in audio, and I'll work as much overtime as you want. And
that's that, like when you're hiring someone, that's probably something that the company quite likes to hear. Like, I'm driven and I will work as long as you will work me.
That's right. There's never say no. If you want the career, that's just how it works. So, basically I just learned from him over the next year and a half, and, it was a good dude to learn from. He knew everything about the business, and, he was on the ATVI side at that time too. And then he brought me over to Treyarch, because they basically send him when they need to rescue online or to, help it out.
Right.
Because, networking is a very, very strange, difficult thing. And you kind of get spoiled on COD with as fast as the matchmaking is.
Yeah.
There's a lot of games out there where it's not like that. But so we got sent over there, and, I met, Brian Toohey and some more of the audio department, a few other key players. But then got sent back to Activision. After that project was over, so I had to try and get back again, and Dan Bunting and David Vonderhaar eventually got me pulled back over to COD 3. Right. And this was my last chance to get in the audio department somehow, and that's when I talked to Chris Cowell, who's Lex Moriendi, if anyone watches my Last of Us streams. Mm-hmm. Him and Brian Toohey, let me do some work and liked what I did, and Dave Stoll, who was the president of Treyarch at that time, hired me after that. So it was a long climb, but that was the foot in the door.
Yeah. And so from there, have you been consistently at Treyarch on sound since then, or has there been any sort of movement around the place?
Yep. Since Call of Duty 3 is when I actually started doing audio work, and it was just for multiplayer. Mm-hmm. And I was still a QA tester at the time, but when I got hired, I was audio designer from then on.
Right. Okay. And so right now, obviously a lot of my viewers will know you because of the fact that you've been so instrumental with the songs from over the years, like the Easter egg songs on the maps and things like that. Sure. Do you have what's the sort of split like, certainly pre-launch, between like campaign and multi and zombies? What sort of stuff do you do in each avenue?
Well, there's actually a split between music and sound effects. I mean, sound effects is 99% of what I do. Like music, I get to do a very small percentage of the time.
Right. Okay.
We like Brian and I have been wanting to kind of get the same sort of I don't know what to call it, methodology that Blizzard used to have back in the old days, which the sound designers are also composers.
Oh, okay.
And we contract composers, of course, like Jack Wall, who's been fantastic and delivers a crap ton of music in a very short amount of time. That's always high quality. But we like to fill in the gaps where we can, and it's just fun too. It's we know the game intimately, and we know where we can put music and stuff like that. So it's good to be able to iterate that quickly. Mm. But I mean, campaign, multiplayer, and zombies. Campaign honestly takes up the largest amount of effort, because you've got cinematics, which have their own team, also with animators and then scripters, and everything is custom in campaign. Everything. There's no system that's just going to run a bunch of things for the most part. Of course, there's AI and things like that, but and that development takes a long, long time. Storyboarding to sketching out the environments to actually getting it running, and then getting all the post stuff like effects and final art and audio and whatnot and things like that, and music, of course, too, at the very end. But now we probably have the 3-year cycle kind of helped us balance a lot of that. So I mean, normally zombies was kind of left until the end,
right?
Especially in the beginning, because it wasn't even a thing yet.
Right. Yeah. Like way back in the day.
Right. But because of the community, everyone saw how important it was. So it started its own team right from the very beginning. And then, we get a lot of time to develop and polish and test and do things like that. Right.
So like you mentioned music and sound effects, like in your sort of day-to-day in the studio, what sort of stuff, like run me through like a typical day of what your life is like working at Treyarch.
Sure. Well, and that also depends on what period of the cycle we're on too.
Okay, cool.
So, like at the beginning of Black Ops 3, we're just trying to kind of mock up or put, temp sounds on what the script is putting in. So instead of a bunch of bad guys running around, it's a bunch of boxes floating.
Right, yep.
So we kind of, come up with sounds we think are going to go there, we think the environment's going to sound like, and we kind of just stub those in. So once you get vibe, then you can actually start, molding it. Because it's not until you have something in the game that you can actually tell what it is and decide what you need to do from there.
Yeah. It's like, this needs to be more squelchy. No, it's still a box running around. Like,
right.
We don't have a sound for that yet, sort of thing.
Yeah, and we all feed off each other too. So, they temp art something in, it kind of gives us an idea for sound, and then once we do that, they hear it and they're like, oh, I can make this, this, and this.
Okay, nice.
And obviously with a big team, you have a bunch of variables, which are all the people and their ideas. So you kind of have to filter it through all of them.
Right. Okay. And so then how does that change sort of towards like when you're building up to the actual release itself?
The release, well, that's, come release is when, crunch time kind of starts. And that's just industry wide, really. There's very few studios I doubt that, don't go through some sort of crunch or any project based anything, not just games. That's when we're, kind of getting rid of any pie in the sky ideas and looking purely at the plan, and then resolving any, bugs if we can find them, making, the executives are making the decisions on this needs to sound like this or look like this. We have focus testers, brought in from outside to play through it and give their opinion. And, we base some of the stuff on that. And so it's, 7 days a week sometimes for a long time, and 10 to 12 hours a day, and sometimes you stay overnight. But, it's just because you want to do it.
Right, yeah.
They don't force you to do it necessarily, but, it's just, we're all obsessed. We're all workaholics. You have to.
Right, yeah. I guess it's like sort of testament to your drive for actually doing it, like your passion for the love of the job, I guess, basically.
Right. It's a mental illness that is productive.
Right, yeah. So, do you ever? You mentioned that you sort of have like execs saying, "Okay, this needs to be this way," or you might have someone saying, "Okay, I want this sound to sound like this or that."
Right.
Do you ever come across times where something comes up and you really want something to be a certain way, and you're like, this is like my brainchild and I love this idea, and then they're sort of like, yep, well, sorry, not today. It's happening this way. Is that like a common occurrence? Or?
Yeah, that happens probably between, just someone on a particular team and their lead, between that lead and the director, between that director and the senior producer. It's there's always someone at the top, like whether it be Blundell or Vaughn, who has a vision. And it's important, that it's not really so much a democracy, because you need someone there who has the vision and understands and can look at the macro view. Mm-hmm. And, in my position, I kind of have to trust in that, and I'm a lot better at that now, but, it's hard to do when you're a new person, because you think you're always right.
Right, and I can imagine sort of coming into a team as well that's already there. It's probably quite difficult to sort of integrate and feel out exactly where the line is and where you need to sort of put yourself to sort of fit into things.
Experience kind of teaches you how to not get butthurt when someone tells you that something needs to change or it doesn't work for them, and it's tough. It's tough for everybody, especially when there's long hours. But I trust the leadership at our company, and a lot of the people run things creatively, and and so when we get feedback, we just try to do the best that we can. And if there's an argument, I usually try to make it with the voice of, if it's going to make what they're trying to do better, and they may be asking me to do something, but their intention is to do something else.
Right.
And I say, well, this might work a little bit better to do what you want to do, But yeah, that happens everywhere. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like the sort of end goal at the end of the day is the final product being as good as possible, I guess. And so it's like, as long as you're moving towards that, then can't complain.
Exactly.
Sort of thing. And then, so pre-launch, you've obviously got that crunch and it's very, very intense. Is it the same kind of intense before a DLC comes out, or how does that sort of change things?
Yeah, once we get the game out the door, the whole game, like Black Ops 3, a lot of people go on rest time, and we get what we call crunch sickness, which is, when you're going intense on something for months, it's like you don't get sick, but the second you have time to rest, you all of a sudden get a cold or whatever.
Yeah.
Everybody goes through something, and it happens every time.
Right.
So when you come back for DLC, you're a little more laid back, and everyone's trying to keep it a little bit more balanced. But certainly, the release of DLC is, it just has a smaller version of the crunch, really.
Right. Okay.
And plus, we have title updates and things like that, so we tend to lean on that a little bit more. But we don't rely on it, but we try to fix as much as we can, and then it's been really helpful to be able to do that.
Does the day-to-day in the studio change much when you're working on a DLC, or is it sort of the same kind of stuff you'd be doing pre-launch?
It feels a little bit more loose because, all the systems are already in place. We're kind of, I don't want to use the word, but we're kind of modding our own game at that point.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like you're building on systems that you've already created,
right.
So it's less about the sort of skeleton, I guess, and more about like putting clothes on it.
Right. Yeah, we're not, we don't have like one of the sound designer, Scott. He's not making, 100,000 footstep sounds, doing systems like that where it's just intensive, long hour, sound building stuff. Instead it's mostly creative, which is kind of cool.
Right. Cool.
Yeah.
So in your like inside the studio, you mentioned that you might certainly pre-launch might have like art team might mock something up and you get inspired from that, and an idea starts to grow, and then they might get inspired by something you've done. Who do you sort of work with on a daily basis at the studio? Like, who are your sort of go-to team, the people that surround you in your work?
Sure. On the audio team, we have a lot of different software tools that we use to get stuff in the game, and we always tell everybody that we're in almost every department. The one that we work with the least is probably like the environmental artists, because they're making lands, well, I'm simplifying what they do, but they kind of draw out what the area is supposed to look like for everyone to build, and we don't ever directly interact.
Right, okay.
But, we're always interacting with animation, like the animation department, because, if it moves, it has to have sound. So, and I don't know, tens, hundreds of thousands of animations that are in the game, including the movies, to just, reloading the gun, footsteps, mantling over something, crawling, climbing, whatever it may be. I'm in constant contact with them because, once they finish their animation, I have to make sure it's locked, and then I render out a video, and then I give it to a sound designer, or myself, and then, design the sound, put it in, and, and then there's the weapons team. Yeah, it's a lot.
And so, alongside the people in sort of other departments, who are your core like buddies in the studio that are also on the sound team? Obviously, there's people like Brian Chewy, who we've sort of heard little snippets from over the years. I was mentioning this to you earlier about how, thinking back to Black Ops 1, we've had little tiny interactions with the devs here and there, and it's always the sound team for some reason that have been most vocal. No pun intended.
Right. We like to talk about ourselves.
Maybe that's it. But there are just a couple of like members of the team who have been like repeat offenders of like sort of teasing the community a little bit and then disappearing, and it's like, okay, well, bye. So like you've got your Colonnairs and Brian Chewy as well.
Sure. Yeah, Brian Toohey, who's at Brian Toohey on Twitter. He's the audio director. And he's been around since, I think he's been in games 14 years.
Right, blimey, okay.
Yeah, he was back on, he worked on True Crime LA, he worked on Secret Agent Barbie. Well, he probably say that.
His masterwork.
Yeah. He worked on United Offensive, I believe. This is before I even met him. And then after Luxoflux, him, which was the true crime game, him and Chris Cowell, who is the audio lead, Lex Moriendi on Twitter, I believe, they came over to Treyarch and basically took over the audio department and hired me, thankfully.
Right,
or
yep.
Thankfully for me, anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, those two guys have been, instrumental in just redesigning how we do tech, how we do everything in sound, and getting us all hired, obviously. And they are also behind a lot of the original characters in Zombies, and how it sounds. Not just them, but certainly they were a huge part of that. Brian Collin, who's King Skylark on Twitter, and Lex Moriarty, Chris, were writing dialogue, for the original characters. Because it was a hacky thing. Zombies was just a couple dudes who made something, and then it was only there because people chose to work on it outside of the work we already had to do.
It's really interesting how we've sort of been told that story, like a little bit more of that story over the years as time has gone on. Like there'll be a little bit added here and there. The most recent was probably Mark Lamia's Dice Talk, where he sort of went over a little bit of that sort of origin of how it was the sort of thing that never really should have happened, because it's like Zombies,
the thing
Call
that
of Duty.
Should not be.
Right, yeah, exactly. He who should not be played. But it's so cool to me that the game has grown from that basically like a sort of recreational side project that was just not ever going to be something that would be even considered for a Call of Duty game, right? Like it's Zombies, that doesn't fit in CoD, to something now which is just like it's on an absolutely another level completely from those humble origins in Nachtor and Toten back in the day
to the more recent origins.
Yeah, man. Like the origins has happened twice now.
Yeah, that was the great thing about Zombies is it was perfect timing for us too, because we were the whipping boy of the Call of Duty franchise back then. I mean, people were hating on Treyarch like it was their job. I remember I was new to games, and Call of Duty 3 was my first COD, and when it came out, I'm like, I can't wait to get on the internet and see how much people liked it. And then I get on there, and I was like, oh god,
just oh dear.
Yeah. I mean, I love the game. I love, but you know how the internet is, and when you're not used to that, the first time you get thrown into it, and you're on Call of Duty, it's kind of overwhelming.
Yeah. And then I mean now, like, I think in a lot of ways, I don't think I'd be wrong in saying that Treyarch is really the favorite of the three devs right now.
As of right now, I've seen a shift in the community. Like I just never, if I could talk to myself in the past, I probably wouldn't believe myself if I said they're gonna like you.
I mean, it's definitely a good position to be in.
85% of them don't want you to kill yourself. So.
Right. There's always a 15 though. They'll always be there, no matter what. You can't get rid of them.
That's right.
So why is it, do you think, that it's been the sound guys that have always seemingly, and again, maybe this is just my sort of naive outsider sort of perspective of what's going on, but it's always felt like a lot of the sound team have been really integral to the story of our mode for start. I say our mode like I've worked on it. Certainly haven't. This is our game now.
Yeah, you and one of the community, or you and the community of the reason why it survived and why it is. So it is. That's true.
So,
the sound team. They have been. It's largely. Like I said, Brian and Chris from the sound team, but there was many more people into it. Like there was a lot of the dudes in the art department who were, writing those things on the walls back in the asylum that became, Easter eggs, and that kind of spawned the whole story.
Yeah.
And people from the animation department, it was everybody running with it. But, the sound department guys were doing a lot of the dialogue with, Adam Gascoigne and a few other people. But, they were just into it. And I think we, or at least, Brian, myself, and Colin, and I think Chris have been interviewed a few times. So it's probably come out that, we were doing a large chunk of that, but it was everybody.
Right. Yeah. And so do you now find that things, because of the fact that I've talked to Jason at some length in the last sort of couple of months, and he's said that for the first time now, obviously in the past, like back, let's say during Black Ops 1, the story was very much an emergent story rather than something that was set in stone from the beginning and then just sort of happened.
Right.
But now there's a little bit more of an idea of where things are going beforehand, and it sort of changes the outlook, I guess, a little bit.
Right.
So do you find yourself doing things a little differently in that regard? Like, are you writing dialogue that is very much given to you in a certain way? Are you even writing dialogue at all, or is that coming from elsewhere? Or how does that sort of fit together?
Well, yeah, back then, the dialogue, like I said, was just a few guys, including Brian, that were writing it because no one had an idea. There was no story, like you said. It was, we were trying to, or they were trying to, I mean, I wasn't actually involved in the dialogue process back then, that much anyway. We're trying to tell a story with as few words as possible.
Right. Yeah.
You remember the way the story kind of came to be was piecing together these little signs on the wall, a couple things they said, the context, and it was this crazy thing that just kind of grew out of, nobody really wrote it, but it was there. It was just this thing. But now, people have come to expect more, and, we've had more time to plan it. So a lot of the dialogue comes from, we have a writing team now. Craig Houston, who's our lead writer, I think that's his position somewhere. Yeah, he's done a lot of the writing on all the modes. So him and Joe Perlesci and Dan Loffer are also writers, and they do a lot of the stuff too. So we wouldn't even be able to. Now the game's become so big, and there's so much to Zombies alone and multiplayer. I mean, there's backstories to the specialists in multiplayer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
that was Dan, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and Dead Ops. Dead Ops is its own thing. Plus, you have the campaign. Plus, you have Nightmares. There's just so much that we couldn't possibly be involved the way that we were.
Is it you guys that are the ones sort of in the studio with the voice actors when they're doing their stuff?
No, we actually
used
to be, but we've been trying to. We have a producer named John Schubert who goes down to the studio, and then the actors have also a director that works with them, to get the kind of lines that we want. And then
it's not you. I always sort of, for some reason, sort of envisioned that it would be you guys kind of feeding them lines, and they'd sort of run with it a bit, and you'd be like, just change this a little to, like.
That does happen. It's just not us, because we're back at the studio putting it in the game.
Okay, right, fair enough. Okay, cool. So, talking of the story and all that good stuff, quite recently, in the last 2 days or so, myself and 3 of my mates, Noah J, Rad Austins, and Money, we've just done the Der Eisendrache Easter egg for the first time, which was amazingly fun.
I recall.
Right, yeah. So there's always been sort of rumors about what Treyarch are actually up to when a map comes out. And there was talk, I can't remember where it came from, but I'm pretty sure probably from some of the tweets that we've seen over the years, there's been talk of bets being placed on how quickly the Easter egg might get solved. And that's always been like a really fun prospect to me, just to sort of think that you guys might be watching us struggle within the maps, not knowing what the hell's going on. And you're like, I know exactly what you're looking for right now. So what's your sort of couple of days like, sort of leading up to launch and after launch? What sort of stuff do you usually fill your time with when that actually happens?
Well, yeah, when it comes out, we do like to, big brother it a little bit and watch people playing on the streams. But yeah, the Easter egg, we definitely, and this was in Colin Ayers' office. He had a whiteboard, and then I think Brian Pearson and a few other people who were coders on Zombies at the time would come over, and we'd all write our days and, and put our bet to see how long it would take. And this was back like on Temple, or I don't know the actual
Shangri-La. Yeah.
Shangri-La, thank you.
Mm-hmm. No worries.
And it was, because like when we started doing Easter eggs and the game would come out, like, that's going to take them forever. And it'd be like 6 hours, and then someone would have it. Like, what?
What?
Yeah, they're going to make this a little bit more difficult. But now, this is the funny thing. It's extremely difficult when we're even working on the Easter egg to know how to do it ourselves. Like, between 4 or 5 of us in the audio department, we could each complete some of it using cheats. But like, when we were watching it, like, I have no idea that part was even there. And one of my other guys in there, James, was like, "Oh yeah, I worked on that." I'm like, "Oh, I didn't even know that was in the game."
So the collective entire sound team could maybe do most of the Easter egg,
Right.
but like they'd have to all be working together, be like, oh yeah, I made that sound, so maybe that means we need to do this, and
Right.
work backwards. Is it
It's complex.
yeah, is there a difference when you're working on something like some asset that's going to be used specifically for an Easter egg? I'm not necessarily talking about like cutscene dialogue or anything like that, but
Right.
when there's I don't know, like a specific thing that's happening, like for example, actually, one of the bow upgrades in Der Eisendrache is an urn, and you've got to interact with this urn, and it talks to you, and it's this booming voice saying like,
Right.
hound, stag, deer, that is not my name, all
Right.
that sort of stuff. Is that like, is there a different sort of vibe in the studio when you're told like I need this asset for this part of the Easter egg? Is there a different approach there, or is it all just the same sound as sound at the end of the day?
Well, with Easter eggs, the goal there is gameplay feedback. Because it's not necessarily ambient. Ambient is more like, it can be there to just kind of be in the background and you accept. But with an Easter egg, you really want to get feedback that you've done something. So we want to make it sound like what it looks like, of course, and give it that, sound designer drama if we can. But it really needs to be about letting the person know that they've done something, because if they spent the last 2 hours trying to get through steps and then they shoot something and have no idea they've turned it on, then
Right, yep.
That's not good.
Absolutely. I can agree with you on that one. And so do you know necessarily that the stuff you're doing is always going to be for an Easter egg, or sometimes is it just like there's a sound, there we go?
Yeah, I can see why you'd ask that. In certain contexts with sound designers, like if they're contracted, they might just get a list of sounds and, say dog bark and they'll just make one. But with us, we're actively running the game and playing it to get to the point. So we see what they kind of tell us what they want, and then we go in there and look at it. And then if we agree, we just kind of do it. But if it's something a little bit different, then we try to make it. And we implement our own sounds, via scripting or, using our tool set or whatever. And it's really important because, if you're disconnected from where it's going, it's kind of difficult to make the sound that should be in there.
And so with the music Easter eggs, because alongside the main quest, which is always obviously this huge hunt to figure it out, and it's very grand.
Right.
There's always obviously a music Easter egg too. And I'm pretty sure that's always you've either worked very much on it or it's your composition entirely. Could you talk a little bit about what that's like, sort of making these Easter egg songs and what the sort of process is there?
Yeah, a little history on that is, you remember there's a song called Lullaby for a Dead Man, or Lullaby of a Dead Man.
God, yeah, that was...
yeah.
Yep.
It's copyrighted both. I have no idea which one I meant it to be. So. That started out with, Nacht der Untoten. When that first came out, there was the camera that would pan across the map when you would die. And I was sitting in Brian Tui's office, and I saw it, and I'm like, I have a chord progression that would sound cool over that. So, I went home to my house and grabbed my $100 acoustic guitar and figured it out, and came and brought my electric in and recorded it in the office and threw it on there. And we were like, that's cool. And then when the next map came around, Brian's like, you should turn that into a song. And I'm like, I can't make a song out of that.
Little did he know.
Yeah. And I actually hadn't played guitar, I think, for like 4 years up to that point.
Oh, right, okay.
Left Berkeley and just kind of gave it up, and I'm like, I'm going to go to games and bury my head and pay my bills and that kind of thing. But so I worked for a while and came up with that. And I'm like, I have vocals, like, what am I going to do? And Brian knew Elena, who was a producer over at Luxo, I think at the time. Maybe she was back at Treyarch, I don't remember, but she's like, she can sing. So we brought her in and just had her sing it, no big deal. And just threw it.
It's like, can I just get you to sing a song real quick? Take 5 minutes? Cool, sorted, thank you.
Right. And the toilet flushing was an homage to an old Sierra game.
Right, okay.
I forget I think it was Manhunter, something like that. You'd have to flush it and you'd hear something, but Brian threw that in there and kind of went from there. But once the story started developing, I had to start writing about that, essentially.
Right. Yeah. And so a lot of the songs are very much like you could listen to them and you just pick out loads and loads of the lines will be very much stuff that is either happening in game, like during the Easter egg, or you just know what it sort of is referring to.
Right.
We've got songs from all sorts of characters' perspectives and stuff like that. Do you now, because obviously in the past with the sound team doing more sort of dialogue work, I guess that was a bit more of an easy process because you were a lot of the creative sort of oomph behind the story, but now that it's a little bit more like you're just sort of doing more of the sound work and less on the writing, do you get a lot of input saying I want these sorts of, like, I want the song to talk about this theme or that sort of thing, or how does that kind of work?
Yeah, actually for this one, for Dead Again, actually, there's another creative director on Zombies along with Blundell, Corki, who I went over to his office. I'm like, just give me some buzzwords and some concepts, and let's start there. And then once I get that down, then I kind of look at the story and like, how do I work these into a meaningful poem? Essentially, is what lyrics are. So yeah, I have to really get in and listen to what they're doing to even write anything, because it's
right, sure.
The story gets really complex.
It certainly does.
Yeah. So
Very
I have
much
to really know what I'm saying when I write them, and then I start out lyrics like just with phonetics nonsense words, and then from there I have to weave in things that make sense.
Oh, okay.
And then
so
structure them accordingly.
Is it always lyrics first then, or
not always? That's
okay.
the problem with music. There's really no formula, or if you do have a formula, it becomes formulaic.
Right, and
you
then
don't want to.
Right, yeah. So something that I just completely forgot I was going to mention a little bit earlier with Black Ops 3. You've got a lot more, I guess that there's a lot more sort of grandeur to the mode because it's on such a sort of bigger scale now.
Right.
Do you find yourself having to kind of step up your songs for each map? Like you need to make them more epic and more awesome and have even more like bass drums in there. Like that's
a tough call. That's hard. That's a hard part about it. Do I make it louder, heavier? At some point, it will be heaviest and or loudest. You can't really do anything about that. So in the middle there, at first I didn't care because I was just writing for fun, and I didn't think it was going to catch on or anyone would give a shit or whatever. But then 115 was the big surprise to me. That honestly, that was the easiest one to write out of all of them.
Really? Okay.
I had just gotten my drum program and I was testing it out, and I'm like, I'm just going to write a double bass groove. And then I wrote it and I'm like, oh, let me put some guitar to see what it sounds like. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then I kind of set it in the back and came back to it later and wrote some more parts. I'm like, oh, I'll just do this for a chorus, and then got it done. And it didn't go in the game until the following game. Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. So it was like a very much old project, I guess, at that point that you sort of brought back and thought, hey, this could actually work really well. Right.
And that's when we were back doing the old pattern of death song becomes Easter egg song.
Right. Yeah.
So the death song was on Doris, and then that's when the project ended. And it wasn't until Kino that we actually put it in the game. Right.
So sort of jumping off from what you've just said about making stuff more heavy or more epic, what do you reckon the most metal lyric you've ever written in your entire career, or just on Zombies, your choice? What is it?
I think it's probably the bridge from Coming Home. I swear to you, I'll kill them all. I'll make them suffer.
It's pretty to the point, that just I will make them suffer. Thanks, Samantha. Appreciate it.
Well, it was interesting. When I had a concert in Canada, I don't know if you saw, it was earlier this year, I think, where they had me out and they had the choir singing it.
So right, yeah, I was going to ask about that as well.
Right, it was the religious choir performing these songs, and then and the arranger made that line repeated several times right near the end. And I'm sitting in the front row, kind of sinking back, going, are these people going to kill me?
No, you're going to make them suffer.
But they were great. They loved it, and they were really nice, and it was just an awesome experience, and it was a good time.
Yeah. So, I mean, we heard about that in sort of little snippets here and there. I think there's a little recap video on the Treyarch YouTube channel of some of the performance.
Yeah.
Are we ever going to see
It's a question I get a lot. Yeah, I doubt it because we didn't necessarily record it for an audio performance. It was just kind of recorded for the videos that we put up there. So I doubt we'll get any, but I haven't even looked at the raw footage yet. There's a possibility we might be able to release some stuff, but that's no guarantee.
Right. It would be great. That's like,
it would be cool. Yeah.
Message from the community, please. Because I mean, I don't know really what. It's probably the fact that it's so heavily tied to the mode, which we've all spent so many hours playing, and the Easter eggs, which we devote an ungodly amount of time. It's just ridiculous how much time we spent and spend on those eggs. And so there's always something very sort of poignant about a lot of the songs where you can sort of hear a song and go, you know what, that just triggers so many memories from the mode, and like killing zombies here or completing a step there, and it's just always good to have more. So any opportunity for more would be very much appreciated. That would be absolutely brilliant. With that said, let me think. Oh, actually, there's one thing that I didn't mention to you before that I will just very briefly say now. With one of your, I believe it was one of the Black Ops 2 Easter egg songs. It may have been Where Are We Going?
Oh, yes.
Maybe.
Mob of the Dead?
Right. It was around then, at least. I'm pretty sure it was late Black Ops 2. You threw in a secret message to one of those videos. I don't remember exactly which song it was, but there was a secret message in there, and it got puzzled out, I believe, by a chap called Rissol on the CODS forums. Please do more of that. Like, I am a massive fan of like the ciphers and the codes, and obviously the Easter eggs as well, and the story and all that stuff coming together is just, it's heaven for me. That's what I really enjoy. And having any more stuff from other places as well, because obviously in the game now, at least, we have just so many ciphers and so many codes. It's absolutely ridiculous. I love it. But it's always cool to see that sort of stuff creeping in to other avenues of the sort of Call of Duty channels as well. Sure,
that was an interesting one. That was Where Are We Going?
Right.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, and that was for Mob of the Dead. That was a song I co-wrote with James McCauley, who is Soundcall on Twitter, SOUNDCAWL, I think. And we started with that, and it was written specifically for a trailer, which is why it's so short.
Oh, okay. Right.
It's a trailer length piece that we were going to write. And
I love that song so much. I absolutely love that song.
It was kind of a surprising thing because we hadn't yet written anything together, and it was just we started with one thing and went to the other, and we should put vocals in this, okay? And I'd known Maluka for a long time, and she'd be perfect for this. So we just kind of threw that together. But I get a lot of complaints of, why isn't the song longer? And it's like, well, it's that was kind of like the old days where the songs were 3 minutes because the side of the record wasn't big enough. But this is, it's for a game trailer, so that's why it was.
It is like that, and so yeah, Where Are We Going and Always Running are such classics in my opinion. I love those two, and it's weird as well because I mean, what was it that made you decide that Maluka might? I mean, obviously there's different sort of vocal characteristics between Elena's stuff and Maluka, but were you just sort of thinking maybe we'll switch it up and we'll just find someone, or was it that you thought Maluka would be just so perfect for this, let's sort of write a song to her voice? How did that kind of happen?
Yeah, honestly, that was just, I was inspired by, I heard her on Skyrim. I hadn't talked to her in years, after Berkeley, because we went to Berkeley together and worked in the studio office together.
Okay, right, cool.
Like years ago. So we were renting out, headphones and microphones for the college studios.
Right, nice.
Then we all came out to California. We used to hang out when we first got it, but then everyone got careers and, stopped talking to each other. But when I heard that, I was like, oh my God, this sounds great. And I just looked her up again. I'm like, hey, let's just do something together. Because was immediately, I'm like, I could write something right now. So that's just how it came to be. Yeah, it was nothing other than that, really. Just like, I thought it'd be cool.
And then there's, Clark S. Nova. Yeah,
right.
That's the one.
Also, Clark is involved in a lot of the ciphers and things like that have come out. Yeah, he's been integral to that and a lot of the Easter egg stuff behind the scenes.
Okay, cool.
he also dropped off the briefcase to
Carbon Fiber, Dan Siemens, the one and only.
Right. Yeah, Clark, he's an interesting dude, so I've been, wanted to write for him too, and it was just another thing, like, just want to do it, so let's do it.
Yeah. And then, I mean, without wanting to sort of probe too far, do you have an idea of exactly what you want the songs to sort of roughly be about, or who you're going to have singing them, or just anything really at all for future maps that haven't come out yet? Or what's that sort of like in your head right now? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I always want to have an idea of something to write in the future for anything, for any reason. And, I guess, I hate to call myself a songwriter, but, I mean, that's what I apparently am doing. But, I'm constantly writing down fragments of lyrics. If there's a guitar riff in my head, I record it onto my phone and then, copy it to a folder on my computer so that I can go back and have hundreds of them. And when it's time to write something for whatever reain, I can listen to ideas and see if I get inspired again. And then those will tell me who's going to sing it or not.
So do you get given like an idea of where the story and stuff is kind of headed, so that you can start sort of churning those ideas over in your head and start thinking, maybe I should sort of be bringing things in a certain direction with my lyrics now and stuff like that? Or how does that kind of play out?
That's the thing that, our timelines are always kind of strained, I guess, because, the story doesn't necessarily come around until later in as well.
Right. Okay.
Or get totally fleshed out. And then, so I do have to wait a lot of times, especially for lyrics. I can have phonetically something pretty good somewhere, but, as far as the actual content, I have to wait until, because I could be saying something the opposite of what I should be.
Right. Yeah.
And that's not good.
Right. So I think probably that is everything that I've really got to ask, other than, do you have any questions or not necessarily questions, anything you want to say to the people watching or anything like that? Just anything at all that you'd like to wrap things up with?
Well, I'd love to say that, thank you all you guys for just supporting the zombie mode in general. It's really close to our hearts because this is something that we truly made from, the ground up. It was just our own thing and kind of separated us from the other studios and marked the beginning of our transition into where we are now. And it's certainly allowed me to, do my thing here and, have people enjoy my music, which is cool. And I've got to troll a lot of people, which is something I've always wanted to do.
That's what you're really saying here. Thank you for letting me troll you.
That's all I've ever wanted to do, and I really appreciate it.
Right, awesome. Well, thank you so much for offering to actually have this conversation and sit down and talk about stuff. It's
fun.
Always been quite difficult to get any real interface going between the developers and the community, just because of the nature of the mode. It's meant to be secretive and stuff like that. So stuff like this is really, really awesome to see. And so thank you very much. I really do appreciate it. So
thank you.
If you guys want to check out Kevin's stuff, then play the game for one, but then also obviously all his links will be down below. You'll have Twitter, his YouTube on there as well. Are you still streaming Last of Us every now and then, or other games?
Every once in a while. I'm not a gaming channel, so I try to do it when people want me to.
Sure. Yeah. And then also obviously you can check out all his music on there and all that stuff. So yeah, once again, thank you very much for coming on. This has been really, really fun. Thank you guys for watching as well. If you've enjoyed, then hit the like button and all that good stuff. And I think I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.